Hey everyone, welcome back to Truth Threads, where real-life stories blur the line between fear and fate. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's dive in. I had owned an Airbnb for a few years. It started as a side hustle, but quickly turned into something darker than I ever imagined. My wife and I used to love the idea, strangers visiting, stories shared through walls, the thrill of easy income. But that thrill faded fast when the stress, messages, and maintenance started eating away at us. One night, a young couple booked the house. Everything seemed normal. Polite texts, cheerful replies, and a simple thank you when I sent them the door code. I thought that was the end of it, until, at around 9 p.m., the man texted me saying, "The water isn't working." Something about that felt off. Still, I wanted to be professional. I grabbed my keys and drove over. 2 cars were parked in the driveway. Strange, since it was supposed to be a couple. I stepped inside after knocking, expecting to see them. The silence was suffocating. No voices, no TV, just still air. I went down to the basement to check the main water valve, and sure enough, it was turned off, manually. That didn't make sense. As I turned it back on, water rushed through the pipes, but a chill ran down my spine. Why was it shut off? I turned to leave when I heard footsteps, heavy ones. The basement door creaked open, and 3 men started walking down the stairs. My heart sank. One of them asked in a calm but sharp tone, "Is it fixed?" His voice was the same as the man who had called me earlier, but this wasn't a young couple. These were older men with cold expressions and dark eyes that followed my every move.
"Yeah, it's working now," I muttered, forcing a shaky smile. None of them spoke again. They just stared. I walked toward the stairs, pretending not to notice the pistol tucked behind one man's back. My pulse pounded as I squeezed past them and climbed out of that basement, my breath trembling as I shut the door behind me and sped home. When I told my wife, she insisted I call the police. 20 minutes later, an officer checked the property. The men were gone. He said there were no signs of anyone. The next morning, we found out the card used to book the stay was stolen. So were our decorations, appliances, and even a few personal items. But what haunted me most wasn't the theft. It was the realization that they wanted me there. The water issue was a setup, maybe to rob me in person, or worse. Why did they let me go? That question still keeps me up at night. I never went to that house while guests were staying again. Eventually, I quit Airbnb altogether. A few months later, I booked an Airbnb myself during a solo road trip. I thought, ironically, it'd be peaceful to finally stay in someone else's home. The place was cozy, the kind of quiet that feels too good to be true. Around midnight, I woke up to a freezing gust of air. The front door, wide open. I knew I had locked it. I grabbed a kitchen knife, heart thundering in my ears, and searched every corner of the house. Empty. No signs of anyone. I texted the host, but it was late. No reply.
At 3
I
a.m.,
locked everything again
I woke
and tried
to
to
faint
sleep.
footsteps right outside my bedroom door. I froze. Whoever it was, they were standing there, breathing. I couldn't see their shadow, but I could feel their presence. I grabbed my phone, and the moment I moved, the footsteps ran, straight toward the front of the house. I called the police immediately. By the time they arrived, the intruder was gone. The host later proved it wasn't him. He was an old man, kind and terrified that something like this had happened. That's when I realized it wasn't about Airbnb. It was about luck. about how sometimes you just walk into the wrong story. The idea that someone had stood in that doorway, watching me sleep, it still sends chills down my spine. Months later, I stayed at another Airbnb on a different trip, trying to move past that night. But peace never lasts long. Around 8 p.m., someone rang the bell. 2 men stood outside, claiming they had the place booked. My heart dropped. I told them to contact the owner, but one insisted I open the door. I lied, saying my husband would come down to handle it. They fell silent. I peeked through the window and froze. 5 more figures stood at the edge of the driveway, faces covered. I ran to the bathroom, trembling as I called 911. I heard wood cracking, the sound of the front door giving way, footsteps, whispers, drawers opening. One voice shouted, "Here!" right outside the bathroom. I held my breath as tears streamed down my face. Sirens echoed in the distance, and just like that, they scattered. When the police came, everything was gone. My bags, car window shattered, house ransacked. The officer said it was part of a larger gang robbing Airbnbs across the city. They didn't want to hurt me, but that didn't make it less horrifying. Every sound, every creak that night made me feel hunted. Now I can't step into an Airbnb without double-checking every lock and window. I learned something from all of it. Danger doesn't always knock. Sometimes it books a stay.